a Happy Cloud audio tool.
A man getting bit by an alligator and he screams.
Okay, quiet. Ow! No, not an owl. The first one you did up here was much better.
It's that time again for the Further Adventures of Rune, Return of the Miggins, brought to you by Happy Cloud Media and Chrome Toothpaste. And now we take you to the world of Trogdyne with the Further Adventures of Rune. Part 1, Refusal of the Call.
Epigraph. Once upon a time, 3 wolf pups were born in the slum of Lower Hogarth. Gary, Frecky, and Rune. While Gary and Frecky were terrifying giants, Rune was barely a quarter of their size, which led to the cruel nickname of Runt. The one-eyed god Odin took with him Gary and Frecky before Rune had a chance to murder them. He'd never forgiven himself for that. Chapter 1. The Broken Beast. An icy wind blew through the city of Ilmet, chasing a shadow in the night. As the figure made its way, the wicked weather slashed at shuttered windows, rattling the sleepers within. Sharp as straight pins, it howled over the steep edge of Buildingstrom Hill, then wound its way down the steep and narrow roads of Tumbledown, and down and down and down until reaching the base of the mound. Then wham! The hooded traveler kicked open the door of the Broken Beast Tavern, thin tendrils of sleet swooshing past him. Conversations hushed, and all eyes turned toward the figure in the doorway, impressively posed in the moonlight silhouette. Then fighting furiously against the evil weather so as to shut again the door, the stranger leaned against it as he regained his composure. "Shut the door!" cried a drunkard, well after the fact. From beneath his hood, the stranger's golden eyes flashed anger, and the patrons found immediate fascination in the elsewhere. Those same eyes, shining out through the shadow of his hood, scanned the room, daring another word to be spoken. All within the broken beast shuddered, dreading the inevitable reveal. He was short, that's all they knew. Now, it is important to note that these were not people of delicate constitutions. Indeed, the broken beast was famous for its infamy, from Thessaly to Gilver. To the blasted lands of the north, and beyond the ice-capped scar, came cutthroats, sellswords, mercenaries, liars, cheats, card shops, secret shoppers, process servers, train spotters, jalopy salesmen, and chiropodists, all to gather and plot within the tavern's walls. In short, the worst of the worst, the baddest of the bones, who came from far and wide to get high and low. For these scurrilous folk of all species, to shiver at the sight of the half-sized stranger was of no small concern, and no intended pun. Whispers spread throughout the tavern like mold across cheese. "Ale!" the stranger demanded, stomping snow from his boots. Prone to argument, something he considered one of his better traits, Joe Termaglio, barman and owner, humanish and possible serial killer, decided against responding altogether, and instead filled a flagon to the brim. He set it gently on the bar, then nudged it forward with his fingertips. With great strides belying his stature, just over 4 feet in boots, the stranger crossed to the bar, seized his mug, then sought an empty table. All eyes followed him, straining against the confines of their sockets, out of curiosity and concern that surely this stranger was the devil himself! It wasn't until he was seated comfortably, ale before him, wall behind, that the stranger lifted the hood from his face. Gasps, both audible and suppressed, succeeded the revelation. The stranger was none other than Rune the Gray, the half-wolf, war hero of the Battle of Blackadder Bay, pirate, janissary, revolutionary, him what was mentioned in the preface. Finally returned home after fleens of campaigning. The mightiest warrior, the hardiest fighter, a single thought spread like a bad cold through the minds of the men at their tables. Maybe now the furry little git will finally mow his lawn. It wasn't that they lacked respect for the warrior. Honestly, it was about the property values. After all, one unkempt parcel of vegetation made the rest of the neighborhood look shoddy, and the Vernica, the land surrounding his castle Sybil all the way to the Great Burney Wood, was in outrageous need of attention. Surely the mighty soldier could appreciate that. Surely, and for certain. but no one was eager to be the first to bring it up. On and off these 9 fleens, the wolf had been gone. Before that, 10 fleens leading the branches of the resistance in both Cornelian wars. A fierce strategist who'd stood upon mounds of corpses, both enemies and his own soldiers, sword raised in victory once the mad King Marinek finally, well, everyone knew the story. Blah blah, oppression, blah blah, replacement king went just as nuts with twice the brutality, blah blah, yakety schmackety, blabbity blah. New ruler eliminated the monarchy, only to replace it with an autocratic presidency, blah. And that was politics for you. For his efforts, now president for life Lassiter Pleiades rewarded Rune the Gray handsomely with his own lands in Roval, in the nicest part of town, where the only neighbors were the elderly and rarely threw raucous parties. Finally, the career fighter could retire in peace in the aforementioned Castle Sybil, except for the dry rot destroying the west wing staircase. Oh, and the mold creeping through 3 of the 5 dungeons. All of the weatherproof glazing around all of the rosette windows needed replacing. That cost a pretty penny, and they'd had to use Stark insulation.
Winter is coming, better call Stark.
Then there were the bloody property taxes, holdover from Cygnus's rule meant to expire if the bloody bastard president for life hadn't renewed them. But that's government for you. So with the glazing, the rot, the mold, the damp autumns, plus the pH balance of the moat was way too high for anyone's liking, plus salaries for the contracted staff, Rune's retirement went into an inexorable hold. And did we mention the blurking taxes? Thanks to all of that, he was forced to advertise as a sellsword, something he considered to be a major step backwards, career-wise. But what other work was there for a warrior and a tactician? He lacked typing skills and had no temperament for middle management. Selling real estate in this economy? Ridiculous to even consider. So mercenary it would have to be. Though always gray, the wolf's fur was now shot through with shocks of white. The top of his left ear drooped over a pair of gold hoops. A chunk was missing from his right ear, and his muzzle bore many scars. Several personages noticed that the tip of his once glorious tail was missing, but none would be impolite or foolish enough to observe this out loud. One thing that age had not erased. Rune the Gray had resting murder face. The head of his ale had barely dissipated when 2 additional hooded travelers invaded his solitude. Rune sighed. It sounded exactly like a vicious, blood-curdling snarl. What? I just sat down! A vicious scar surrounded by a face leered down at the mighty wolf. So, said the twisted mouth belonging to the face, I see your back. No, you see my front, Rune replied, and I'll thank you to keep your eyes to yourself. A berserker's rage began to creep through Mundegrin the Cruel, for that was the scar-bearer's name, manifesting as a crimson flush easily mistaken for a bad rash. Red spread from beneath the faux-furred collar of his genuine rubber Macintosh, smeared across his cheeks. Blood shot his eyes, angried up his ears, then disappeared beneath the rim of his spiked German helmet. Hard fought and blood spilt, but eventually won an auction. Besides Mundegrin the Cruel, humanish and pinkish, was his companion and bootblack, Spinrod McMulch, also humanish, presumably. The 2 had been inseparable since discovering they shared a barber. The 3 remaining fingers on Spinrod's left hand stroked the pommel of his sword, trembling in an anticipation of finally using it after fleens of it dangling from his belt. It wasn't that Spinrad lacked the bloodlust of his compatriot, only the reflexes to draw first. Normally, before Spinrod could even react, any who dare besmirch Mundegrin were already lying in small, quivering heaps, diced for their temerity, for that was the might of Mundegrin's temper. What was left of Mundegrin's upper lip curled into a snarl, revealing 9 sharp teeth spaced at varying intervals. Do you know me not, Rune the Gray? Another heavy sigh escaped the wolf. I know you, Mundegrin, he said. Mundegrin the Cruel, Mundegrin the antagonist.
Mundegrin the Rotarian,
said Spinrod, the interrupter. Yeah, said Rune. What is it with you guys and all the titles? Why do I never casually run into somebody called Octavius the Reasonable? Enough, roared Mundegrin the Short-Tempered. I know well of your word games. I shall not be swayed. What swayed? That's obviously canvas, Rune said, indicating the man's trousers. His wardrobe was a line that Mundegrin would not see crossed, having had his eyes medically straightened in the Navy. Have at you, morph scum! And with that, Mundegrin reared back and drew his longsword. Spinrod fumbled with his shorter blade, but only managed to cut his thumb. For his part, Rune was unruffled. As mondegreen leaned forward to compensate for the weight of his mighty steel, Rune's right paw shot forward and 2 fingers went into mondegreen's nostrils, and he hurled the man overhand across the room. The scar-faced mendicant crashed into 2 tables, overturned 7 flagons of ale, upset 2 barmaids, 5 patrons, and many floorboards, before finally slamming into yonder wall with a dreadful, skull-smushing thud. Went the mercenary's neck-melon against the hard wood. Without acknowledging his presence, Rune wiped his paw on Spinrod's tunic. Spinrod stood mouth agape, terrified beyond rational thought. The wolf glanced up at the weasel-faced, few-fingered assassin's apprentice. The skull-capped thug's hands shook, his toothsome snarl trembling, but he remained where he was, unsuccessfully looming over Rune. Eventually, he wandered away to become Spinrod, the no longer in this story. Unpleasantness accomplished, Rune blew away the foam from his flagon. He watched as the splot of foam landed on the far end of his pitted wooded table. Just beyond the splot and pits stood 2 more visitors. A tension headache sidled up behind his brow. All about him, other patrons of the Broken Beast worked feverishly to remain unnoticed. With far less flair for the dramatic, the 2 newest unwelcome guests doffed their hoods and smiled broadly at him. "Ah, Rune, my friend!" exclaimed the golden retriever in the flight cap and goggles, who seized Rune's paw with both of his own. "Rune!" rejoiced the flame-haired, humanish woman to the dog's right, who seized Rune's remaining paw in her freezing but beautifully manicured hands. "Bugger off!" said Rune. It is worth noting at this moment that Rune's unwelcome guests were heralded heroes in their own right. The dog, Dusty Sinclair, was a celebrated pilot and recipient of the Brass Knuckle for his service in the Second Cornelian War. Dim as a brick he was, but he could thread the needle or storm a barn or walk the wing or sputter the prop like no other. The woman, Sinclair's espoused, was none other than Red Scarlett, swordswoman, sharpshooter, an expert with longbow, crossbow, quarterstaff, three-quarterstaff, half-pipe, shuriken, and decoupage. Without their uttering a word, Rune knew they were there to present him with a quest. "But it's a pretty good quest," cajoled Sinclair. "No, sawed off. It would benefit many lives, serve many great causes. No, and I don't care." Was there an insect swimming in his ale? Something with legs was definitely kicking at the foam. "It would be your chance to really prove your mettle. My mettle is already established fact. Get stuffed." Bug or no bug, Rune downed his brew. Aside, when Dusty met Rune. At that moment, Rune had no choice but to think back to the first time he'd met Dusty Sinclair in Northern Slidersham. It was a night not unlike that very night. Exhausted from a round of hooliganism and badminton, Rune sought shelter and sustenance in a tavern called Bell's Balls, renowned for its cotillions. Returning with his ale, turkey leg, and cob salad, the wolf was only slightly startled to find that his chair was occupied by a golden Labrador in a flight helmet, goggles, and admittedly spiffy bomber jacket, the emblem of the 42nd Flying Mudfish Squadron emblazoned upon its back. Beneath his jacket were the finely honed muscles of a Charles Atlas graduate. Sheltered by khaki jodhpurs were legs that had seen plenty of danger and possessed the strength to outrun it. The throat guarded by the silk scarf, specially made to flap proudly in the faintest of breezes, was accustomed to delivering valiant battle cries and vaguely dirty yodels. The skull encased in the leather aviator's cap with matching goggles housed, well, very little, as Rune later found out. Yes, before Rune was a hero of the highest order, with a devil-may-care glint in his eye and a song in his heart, sensitive enough and secure enough in his masculinity to cry at the beginning of Up, and yet jocular and fun-loving enough to play punch-up with the boys. With a strong cleft chin Kirk Douglas would kill for, this was a dog ready to face the world, serve up a smile with the kind of gleaming white teeth rented out for dentist seminars, and say, "How you doing, Chief?" smugging up with Rune with Frazetta-esque bravado. Rune was unimpressed. "You're blocking my chair, Snoopy." Thus was the beginning of Rune's most frustrating relationship. Back to Chapter 1. Scarlett narrowed her emerald eyes, her ruby lips stretching into a quite evil smile, slightly undercut by the freckles arching across her button nose. "It promises good fortune?" "Okay, real quick." Upon seeing Red Scarlett again, Rune thought back to the first time they'd served together before the First Cornelian War. Though previously acquainted due to a series of misadventures involving a sacred jewel, a heist, and 2 different employers, it wasn't their first battle mission that had landed them deep in the snee. Then, he was still a ruffian, not yet the tactician they'd later sing about. Little more than an enthusiastic volunteer in the resistance, just a sword and an unbreakable spirit. At the age of 19, Red Scarlett was already a seasoned warrior, a direct descendant of the Valkyries, raised in Tu Obscura by the Primazons. During the Battle of Woeful Ridge and Carcassonne, she and Rune had been pinned down by enemy fire, platoons of Iron Pants advancing rapidly. As she loaded another drum into her Thompson, her body shifted beneath the strict-cut, form-fitting leather jacket, and Rune caught a glimpse of her true uniform, the emblem of the warrioresses of her lineage. He wasn't sure how to ask this question. Are you wearing chainmail bikini under all that? She nodded and drew back the rifle's slide with grim determination. It's war. I need to feel confident. And then over the top they went, howling with the rage of a million angels. The Iron Pants never knew what hit them on that glorious day. Later, at camp, he found her delivering her damaged accoutrement to the laundress, the leatherworker, and the blacksmith. Later still, in his tent, still warm from the fire. But that is another story, one that Dusty St. Clair must never learn. Back to Chapter 1 for real this time. Where were we? Blah, 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 Scarlett, the freckles arching across her button nose. Right. It promises great fortune, she said, possibly again. With the sudden image of his mortgage payment blooming in his mind, Rune slammed down his mug. No, 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 and how much? Too much to count. I don't have to take off my shoes to do math, woman. Give me a ballpark figure. 8 quadrillion slaves, she said. Uh-huh, and how much of that is gold? You see, the Bank of Rouville preferred yucks over paper currency. It was another pointless financial cruelty. What's the current exchange rate? Okay, whatever. Rune sighed. It was a heavy sigh, utilizing his entire body to the tips of his gray fur. I'm knackered. Let's talk about it later. When shall we meet? On the morn, said Dusty. Rune glared at him. And what time is the morn? We talking 8, 8:30, closer to 11? Sunrise. Saw that. 10, offered Red. And actually, we don't have to leave until Friday, so plenty of time to get your beloved affairs in order. Blur, damn it. 10, and not a moment before. So it's decided, exclaimed Dusty. Obviously, Sneebrain. Rune pushed away from the table and stood. He glared at Scarlett. Why did you marry him again? He has many great qualities. Name one. I like his hat. Fair enough. With a great yawn and a full stretch, Rune cracked his neck, knuckles, sternum, Oxford comma, and tail. Okay, we'll meet tomorrow, 10-ish, and discuss strategy. You can fill me in on all the details. We'll start with the fortune and work backwards. Marvelous. And where shall we meet? The same old place. Ah, said Dusty, voice wistful with memory. You must mean the old same place. How I've missed it. Whiling away the hours, waiting for the electrician. Or someone like him. Yes, indeed, my love. Indeed. Rune then observed that the old scarred dartboard still hung upon the wall, and felt a remedy for both his headache and his purse. Say, Dusty, old jerk. Yes, Chief? How much coin you have on you? I have a couple of yucks, why? Rune strode to the board and withdrew the 6 darts with one yank. Fancy a game? As if someone had yelled, BOMB! Every man-jack patron of the Broken Beast dove for cover beneath the tables, some even abandoning their drinks in favor of survival. For it was known throughout the land, whispered in hushed and fearful tones, Rune the Gray, hero of Slidersham, the terror of Trogdyne, was the greatest darts player in all of known history. Before the night was over, Dusty had managed but a score of 16. On Rune's final return, 3 darts, each one stuck into the fletched end of the other, protruding from the exact bullseye center of the board. A triple bullseye. Surely, this was one for the books. And with that, Rune pocketed all of Dusty's fun money. Fortunately for his marriage, Dusty and Red kept separate finances.
This concludes Chunk the First of the Further Adventures of Rune. Tune in next week and hear Rune say, as far as I'm concerned, perfect is the enemy of done.